I'm Jack Kennedy, and they hit a lot harder in my opinion too.
What is up, everybody? My name is Keelan McNamara, and everyone's got a plan until they get hit with my views.
I am Hunter Boss. He just wanted to go to the distance by the looks of it, but he couldn't even do that.
And this is the MMA Island Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island Podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Keelan McNamara and Hunter Boss. We are back with another loaded episode, and we're going to get started off today with a bit of a fun introduction topic thing. Our top 5 contenders in the UFC right now, not contenders, up-and-coming contenders, new people in the UFC climbing the ranks, guys that we're excited to see that have already made a standpoint that we think could really climb the ranks in the future. Hunter, starting with you, who do you have at number 5?
How can I not have Khamzat Chimaev on this list? I'm just going to get out of the way right now. Khamzat Chimaev, definitely one of the most up-and-coming prospects we've been seeing lately. He can wrestle. He has power behind his strikes. He is now just getting over his sickness, and he's been talks about fighting in July. I've heard talks about how he wants to fight against Neil Magny, which could be a really fun fight.
Yeah.
But I really hope we can see him soon in the octagon, and he's just one of the newest contenders we've seen that really rose to the stardom like really fast. You know, we saw him wrestling really good. Then he had back-to-back fights on back-to-back fight cards on fight week in the summer. And then he comes out and knocks out Gerald Meerschaert in the first round with the first punch. You know, this guy's entertaining. He has all the ability he needs. Now he just needs to get in there and fight. So can't wait to see him fight.
Dude, I love that shite. That is a great way to kick off the episode for sure. My number 5 is Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
The boy at lightweight. When we did our lightweight episode, I think all 3 of us had Makhachev in our top 10. So that shows you how highly we rate him already. You know, the guy's on an 8-fight win streak. There's very little I can add to what he's already done. And it's very rarely I say this, but evidence would almost appear to back up that very few people do want to fight him. If you believe Makhachev's narrative, a lot of opponents have avoided taking a bout with him. So make of that what you will, but the guy is as real as they come. Incredibly impressive win streak, and Makhachev is going to climb the lightweight rankings in the next 12 months, beyond no doubt.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. And I'm going to keep it going with another different fighter to start off our list. I'm going to go with Arnold Allen. A bit of an interesting one, but we just saw him fight recently, and I think this guy has all the potential in the world to keep climbing the ranks in that division. He's so well-rounded already. His fight IQ is not matching his fight age, as I like to say, and he's just going to keep getting better. He said he was trying to look for that finish. He's one of those guys that, whether he looks for a finish or not, it's an entertaining fight, and he is dominant usually when he fights. I really didn't think he was going to win the last one, but he did, and it was impressive. And Arnold Allen will keep getting better, in my opinion, and I think he is a very strong up-and-coming contender.
I love the Arnold Allen show. I was driving to the store today. I'm like, man, who do I want to put on this list? And I thought about Arnold Allen. I'm like, you know what? He's already so high up there on the featherweight rankings. I'm like, I'm not going to include him. But speaking of featherweights and speaking of people avoiding fights, my 4th person here is Ryan Hall. You know, he's been around in the UFC for quite some time. He was on the Ultimate Fighter for a while, won the Ultimate Fighter. And nobody wants to fight Ryan Hall because of his deadly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, which I love to watch. And he finally just has an up-and-coming fight confirmed. I think it's Leah something. I'm not sure, but it's in July. And I just can't wait to watch Ryan Hall fight again because he has been improving his stand-up lately. We saw it in the Sacramento card about 2 years ago in 2019. And since then, no one's confirmed a fight with him because of how deadly his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is. But finally, someone's confirmed a fight, and it's going to happen. Hopefully I won't jinx it right here, but can't wait to see him back in the octagon.
Love that. Again, Ryan Hall is an OG of the BJJ game. Mm-hmm. Jack, we're thinking along similar lines once more, my friend. My number 4 is Arnold Allen.
Love it.
And again, it's hard to add on to what you've already said. You sum him up perfectly. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the stats I've got here. A 10-fight win streak. Insane. Double-figure win streak. It's such a rare thing nowadays. And, you know, we broke down the Sadiq Yusuf win a couple of months ago, and he was just as impressive as he could have been in that fight. and he has such a skill set that's so easily transferable to the rest of his opponents. It's such a varied and well-rounded game that it's very easy for him to smother other parts of his opponent's game. And I just think he's such a fluid and adaptable fighter that he will climb up the rankings at least minimum 3 spots by the end of this year. So Arnold Allen's a shoe in for a number 4 for me.
Love it, love it. And I really like the Ryan Hall shout, by the way. We have him in our intro. We have to include the 50-50 in it. I love him. I'm going to go ahead and again, Keelan, we're thinking along the same lines as well. We flipped him. I have Islam Makhachev as my number 4. Just like you said, I mean, he's one of the guys that has what it takes to be a champion in that division. What that is he has a very similar style to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and he just smothers his opponents. His recent fight against Drew Dober, he will lose, but he will not be dominated when he loses. He was dominated by Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is definitely a top 10 fighter, in my opinion, and especially in the 155-pound division. Once he starts getting those higher level opponents, which should be very soon, I mean, I think he could be championship material very quickly. And I'm very much looking forward to see the best that Islam has to offer in the lightweight division.
Yep, great shouts, great shouts. Love Islam Makhachev, can't argue. But speaking of smothering and speaking of Nurmagomedovs, how about Umar Nurmagomedov here at number 3 for me?
I like it. I like it.
You know, he's a bantamweight upcoming. He's undefeated, just like his brother or cousin. And we saw him fight recently. He finished his opponent with the rear naked choke, I believe. And, you know, he has what it takes to be the next Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know, he's got the last name. You know, he's undefeated. And he's got fantastic wrestling, and his stand-up is pretty good as well. I think if he improves his stand-up even more, then we will get some fantastic performances out of him and maybe a future UFC champion. So just wait and see.
Dude, Umar Nurmagomedov's a beast. That is such a good shot, and so many people are going to sleep on him too. My number 3 is a guy who I actually think flies under the radar much more than he should, in a division that flies under the radar much more than it should. My number 3 is Cyril Gane at heavyweight.
Oh, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we talked about this a while ago, I pegged Cyril Gane as a future heavyweight champion because he offers something that very few heavyweights do, probably since prime Cain Velasquez. He offers that relentless gas tank and that pressure going forward. He's a nightmare for a division that is most built around hit and hope, especially first, second round fights the majority of the time. Cyril Gane is a fighter who can happily smother you for 5 rounds if he has to. He has the skill, he has the ability. He has that savate kickboxing, the French variant that's very, very difficult to figure out in the feet. You know, he comes with such weird angles. He strikes hard. He's in, he's out. He's just an all-round nightmare, no matter what angle you try and tackle him from. And I think not only will Cyril Gane climb up the rankings quite easily, I think he will be within championship striking distance by the end of the year. So Cyril Gane, you are very, very worthy of being high in my top 5.
Yeah, I love it. I think he has a fight against Volkov coming up pretty soon, which I am extremely excited about. That's gonna be awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So sticking with bantamweight now, I'm on Hunter's side here. I'm gonna go with the ever so popular Sean O'Malley. Now I know he is already one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, but when you look at his record and you look at where he is, he's still an up-and-coming contender. He dropped that loss against Marlon Vera, came back with a brutal finish and knockout over Thomas Almeida. And he's looking to continue his momentum. I would never really say his momentum was really halted because he has that confidence, and that style that he has is so beneficial to him and why he's a big fan favorite already. I really do think with more development in his game, as long as his leg doesn't get kicked out from under him, according to him. So I think he could really climb the ranks, and I want to see him start fighting some big name opponents because he needs to. This is the next big step for Sean O'Malley if he wants to become that legitimate contender. He's not even ranked right now. If he wants to be that number 5 like Keelan had on our bantamweight rankings, then he needs to start fighting guys that will get him to that ranking. But I do think he can do it, and that's why I have him on my list as number 3.
Yeah, he may have lost that fight to Marlon Vera, but you know he wasn't defeated. You know he rolled his ankle. Then Marlon Vera took advantage of that, which is fantastic, and he won
Yeah.
that fight, but he was not defeated in that fight, and I think he's a great up-and-coming prospect. But my number 2 is kind of a tie right now. I have Giga Chikadze and Merab Dvalishvili. I think both of these
Oh,
fighters are
Very
up-and-coming in their
nice.
weight divisions. I think they're both ranked number 10 currently, and they have this type of pressure they put on during the fight that is unmatched in both their weight divisions. They go out there and they put on a performance, and you're like, man, who's that fighter? Oh, that's Merab Dvalishvili. I wonder when he's going to fight next. He's fantastic. Both of them are fantastic, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted to put above the other, so I just put them on the same rankings here. And I have them both at my number 2 spot, basically.
aren't they both
Yeah,
from
man, I'm not.
Georgia too? I'm
What's
pretty
up?
sure they're both from Georgia as well.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah.
Shout out them man from Georgia. I'm not
Yeah.
mad. I wouldn't have been able to put one over the other either.
Yeah.
So I think that's very fair what you've done, actually. Fair play for that. My number 2 is actually going to be the guy I originally had at number 1. My number 2 is Sean O'Malley as well, actually, Jack. And, I put in quite an extensive and argumentative justification for Sean O'Malley in our last Bantamweight episode. But I really think this kid's just such a raw, natural talent. And he's one of the very few fighters that you can look at in his raw form and see world championship caliber in him. And Sean O'Malley is just one of those guys, the natural skill set he has. He's tough, he's durable, he's fast, his gas tank is very, very good. And, he took the loss to Marlon Vera. There was no illegitimacy about it whatsoever. I actually think he'd win himself over more fans if he did acknowledge that he lost, because it happens to everybody. There's no shame in it. But I think he will climb the rankings very, very quickly. Of course, that is absolutely conditional on him fighting a certain caliber of opponent. I do agree with Jack, and Jack absolutely made the right point on that episode too. He needs to start fighting ranked opponents, and I'm fully in agreement with that, because I think he has the talent and the ability to beat them anyway. So after this next fight against, I believe it's Louis Smolka that he's fighting next, 264. After that, I want to see a ranked opponent next for Sean O'Malley, because this kid can go all the way to the top. And with that, I have no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hunter, we're on the same page with this one. Giga Chikadze. Now, I don't have Merab Dvalishvili, but I mean, he's just as good. But I'm sticking with the Giga show. What we saw with him over Cub Swanson was a legit contender being born right there. He is a guy that is already one of the most decorated strikers in the UFC because of his striking game outside of it. And now that he's starting to adapt the MMA principles into his game, he's actually becoming a very good fighter. It's taken him a little bit. He had a couple decisions and stuff, but now he's looking to finish. He's looking to fight smart, keep cardio and stuff, but also work on his wrestling. And Giga Chikadze is looking amazing. He is one of those guys that I've been following for a while. I really enjoy to watch, and I really think this guy can climb the ranks very high. And after beating a guy of the caliber of Cub Swanson by a liver kick just that quickly, he's going to get a big name opponent pretty soon. And I think I don't know. I think he could beat a lot of those guys up there and just keep going. That division is so stacked already. We just got a big fight booked in it that we'll talk about later on this podcast. But he is just so interesting. And honestly, in any fight with Giga Chikadze is going to be amazing. And just his striking is just one of those things that's so specialized. He's one of the true specialists in MMA already. And there's a lot of guys that won't want to fight that, which makes him very special. And I want to see him get those fights because I do believe he can climb the rankings and just show everybody what he's made of.
Yeah, that'd be a fun fight. Or just have him fight anyone in the top 10.
Yeah.
Would be a fun fight for me because I love watching him. My number 1 is Islam Makhachev because he's such a dominant fighter. We see him go out there. He can stand up. He can grapple. He was training under Khabib's dad for a while. There's not much else you could say about the man. DC has stated this multiple times. He thinks he's going to be the next lightweight champion, and I could definitely see it happening. He's got the skills. He's just needs the big name shots. I do have an honorable mention here, though. Just because he didn't fit anywhere on my list, I have Jack Shore. I think Jack Shore, he's undefeated in the bantamweight, 14-0. He's a fantastic grappler, and he also has great stand-up as well. And he's rising very fast. So just watch out for Jack Shore. He's not my number 1, Islam Makhachev is, but watch out for him.
Yeah, very, very good shouts once again, Hunter. I expect nothing less, to be honest. My number one, I'm surprised no one's actually mentioned yet, and I'm putting him at number one because I think he is the best. My number one's Yuri Prohazka.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's like
He's
Yeah,
had
cheating.
2 fights. He's had 2 fights in the
He's had two
UFC.
fights and he's getting a title shot next.
He's had two
It's hard to
fights.
put
Yeah.
him anywhere.
did you see what he did to Dominic
Oh, of
Reyes?
course, no. I
The
mean,
one
I agree.
fight,
He's
yeah,
he's
the
The
definitely
question is he up and coming or not? But like he
right.
has to be with 2 fights.
He's
Yeah.
he's already coming. He's up there already.
Yeah.
So
I exploited the technicalities once again. I had to do it because he's that good. He's worth exploiting them for. Yuri Prohazka is a special, special fighter. To me, he's the 205 Tony Ferguson, and I think that's a big part of why I like him as much as I do. You know, Yuri Prohazka is one of the only fighters I've been able to call the end of their fight shot for shot somehow. That spinning elbow against Dominic Reyes was one of the best technical knockouts I've ever seen. And the guy is just such a scary light heavyweight. He brings such a unique and diversified skill set to the division. One that I don't think we've seen since Jones at his peak, I would argue, just in terms of how much of a specialist he is and how good he is everywhere he fights. And I think Yuri Prohazka, after Jan Blachowicz, is going to be the next light heavyweight champion. I think he's that tough, he's that durable, and he's that much of a puzzle for his opponents to solve that he can just win the fight from anywhere. He can knock you out like he did against Reyes. He has a world-class jiu-jitsu and grappling game as well. Yuri Prohazka is a human Rubik's Cube, quite frankly, and I think he is not only going to climb up the rankings, but he's going to get the gold too.
Yeah, I was nervous. I was gonna have to defend my pick at number one, but Keelan, you took it. You took the brunt of it, and now I get to carry it on. Yuri Prohazka, absolutely number one for me. He is an up and coming contender. Like I think you have to say that in the UFC. 2 fights. In 2 fights, he is going, or okay, at least we all think the MMA Island consensus is that he should be fighting for the title shot next, which means the UFC needs to listen to us and book that.
You heard it here first, Dana.
Exactly, Daniel White, get on it. But I mean, he is just in his 2 fights. He got thrown in the waters against Volkan Ozdemir. How tough is Volkan Ozdemir? People don't talk about him enough. He's been off and on since his title shot, but he is still one of the toughest guys in the division and will rock basically anybody he fights. Yuri knocked him out cold, knocked him out bad. Added one highlight reel already. Everybody's on the Yuri Prohazka train. His next fight, his second fight in the UFC, a fight night main event against Dominic Reyes. And how good did Dominic Reyes look? He actually looked really good. He survived a lot of the storm. He rocked Yuri Prohazka, and then Prohazka landed that beautiful spinning back elbow out of absolutely nowhere and knocked him out cold. And it's honestly one of the wonders of MMA is Yuri Prohazka. Just everything about him, his hair, everything. He sits in lakes and meditates and everything. He's Tony Ferguson with a splash of Diego Sanchez mindset, and it's just so beautiful to watch. And he's already one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Just like when Justin Gaethje came in and started delivering those amazing performances, he became instantly one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Yuri Prohazka has done that, and in 2 fights, he is one of the best up-and-coming contenders of all time in the UFC, I would argue. And I cannot wait to see where his career goes from here. I agree with you guys. I think it is a bit of a technicality because he already has made it. He already is a contender, but I say up-and-coming because 2 fights, literally 2 fights in the UFC, and has done that. So Yuri Prohazka, number one. That's what I have as well.
Yeah, I feel like the light heavyweight division needed him. Like they needed something to rejuvenate the division, and this was him. This is his time to come in, and he did so. He's number 2 right now. He's done fantastic things with only 2 fights in a weight division, and people look forward to watching that weight division again. Like I remember light heavyweight fights happening. I'm like, oh, I'm either going to see wrestling or just no one's going to throw a strike. But now when I watch a Yuri Prohazka fight, I'm like, oh man, sit down, let me grab my popcorn. I'm going to grab the video camera to show all my friends because this is going to be a fantastic fight.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a very good example you use as well. I mean, we all remember the sort of golden days of the light heavyweight division when you have your Dan Hendersons, your Shoguns, your Joneses, like peak John Jones, your Gustafsons, your Cormiers. Since then, and especially since the whole drama over the last year or so with John Jones. Light heavyweights kind of fallen by the wayside a bit. And with the utmost of respect to the guys, fights like Alexander Rakic, Thiago Santos has been putting people off 205 more and more. So someone had to realize this was their golden opportunity to grab the limelight, put it back in 205 again, and put themselves in a title picture. And who stepped up? Yuri Prochazka did. And he has done it in the most emphatic and brilliant way possible. And for that, I think he deserves just so much credit because he's taken a division that hasn't had as much attention on it recently, and he swung the attention back onto it single-handedly. I just think the man's such a good fighter, and I really do think he's next for the gold.
You guys could not have said it better right there. And speaking of up-and-coming contenders in the making, the Ultimate Fighter is about to kick off again June 1st. Very excited to see that. Team Ortega versus Team Volkanovski. Hunter, what are you looking forward to with this?
Honestly, I'm looking forward to the house life. I want to see what it's going to be like for all those contenders to live together in the same house and kind of just see what's going to be happening, because this is COVID times. We're still kind of in it. Las Vegas just lifted their mask mandate. Is the UFC going to enforce any sort of COVID regulations in the house? Hopefully not. No one wants it to happen, but it's definitely a possibility, and how the fighter is going to deal with that as well. I think this could be definitely a screwball in the makes of this TV show. And I'm also excited to see the coaches. We haven't really seen anything mean coming out of Alexander Volkanovski's mouth. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the nicest guys in the UFC, and Brian Ortega is usually a pretty nice guy. I mean, when he had that debacle with the Korean Zombie not too long ago, but they got over it already. They fought. They hugged it out at the end. They're both good fighters. Brian Ortega is a beast, and I can't wait to just see him fight in the octagon soon. And let alone with Alexander Volkanovski, the current featherweight champion. He does not get enough credit because Alexander Volkanovski, he was one of those up and coming contenders. No one realizes his rise to the UFC. He was a rugby player, and he weighed over 200 pounds. Now he weighs 145 pounds, and he's the champion. He just started wrestling and fighting MMA at 23 years old. This guy is definitely something else, and I can't wait to see both those coaches just going at it. I want to see them coaching their fighters. I want to see what kind of valuable input they can offer for these up and coming UFC fighters, hopefully. So I'm excited for the COVID times and excited for the coaches.
Yeah, when it comes to the Ultimate Fighter, I pretty much enjoy the same things and look for the same things every year. I love the Ultimate Fighter, as I'm sure we all do, because it's just such an institution of our sport, and it saved the UFC from extinction. Of course, that famous Stephen Bonner Forrest Griffin fight, tough one. I must be honest, I do like the years when there's animosity between coaches and it feels like there's something to prove. Looking at you, Rampage Jackson, smashing that door, love that. But those are the kind of things I look for. And it might be a bit of a simplistic take, but what I look for from Tough are the next world champions. I'm looking for the new blood that's going to rejuvenate every division. And I really like Hunter's perspective on house life, because this is one avenue that's going to be totally different to any other season for that very reason. But I love looking at the new talent and seeing what they bring to the fight scene and seeing what they do differently to everybody else. I mean, you think back in previous seasons who we've had the likes of Cody Garbrandt, we had Robert Whittaker who came through tough. We had I think Kamaru Usman came through tough too. I mean, we've had some of the best fighters come through tough, and they've been nurtured and coached at that very early stage by the world-class talent that came before. And I really love seeing that system of coaching and mentorship throughout the seasons, because it shows the fighters' true personalities as well. And like Hunter said as well, I really like seeing the coaching staff behind the fighter, and especially this year because we have two of the most elite coaching teams on this planet. We have City Kickboxing for Alexander Volkanovski, likes of Eugene Berman, who are notoriously good at what they do. And then, of course, with Brian Ortega, we have Henner Gracie and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the founders of the pinnacle of the sport. So you really have got two of the very best aspects of the sport on the planet directly colliding. And I suppose most of all, I'm looking forward to seeing how those philosophies are implanted onto the fighters and how they execute that against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with everything you guys just said. And the one thing I was thinking too is just like I'm excited for how the coaches themselves are going to deal with what's going on in the Ultimate Fighter. And a lot of that, there hasn't been an Ultimate Fighter for a long time now. Usually they were doing it once a year, and keeping up with it consistently, but they hasn't been one for a little bit. I don't know. I want to
I
say
think
2 years.
2018, I think maybe, with Brad
2018.
Katona
So
being the champion, or I mean,
wow.
someone coming out on top, I
Yeah.
believe.
Damn.
It's been a
That was a
while.
long time ago. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the entire dynamic of it could have changed, especially with two guys that are calm tempered and level headed usually in Brian Ortega versus Volkanovski. But what's interesting is how they're going to handle themselves knowing that they have to fight each other. That is something that's interesting, and keeping the respect, but also keeping the competitiveness within the house. And that goes back to the house argument that you guys both said as well. The COVID thing is interesting. And one thing for me is just it's always interesting to see the chemistry between the fighters in there, because obviously you're with everybody on your team, but you're also competing against everybody on your team and against everybody on the other team, obviously as well. So how will they, be able to, their chemistry, how will it be? How will the fights impact what's going on? If a team gets really far behind, do they completely get demoralized, or do they come back? Because we've seen that in some seasons, like the Black Zillions versus American Top Team season. The Black Zillions got down early and never really recovered from it. But another season, McGregor Faber, it was very close. And that was a fun one as well because they were trash talking. But it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited to see the training sessions as well, and that's going to be another interesting aspect of how they're going to have to do it. Because I do believe since it's coming out, it must have already been recorded, so it probably was in COVID restrictions wise, unless they did once you're in the house, you've already been tested, you're good to go. But if they did do training will be different, and the fighters won't be able to get necessarily all the hands-on stuff they would have got in a normal season. That being said, those two guys, Brian Ortega and Volkanovski, and their respective teams could not have helped out those fighters that are in there better. And I think we're going to get some phenomenal fights. And we're going to see some real contenders that will be really good in the UFC. Now, Ultimate Fighter is not just your neighborhood guy coming in. These are already pretty good guys that are going in there and being shaped and formed into even better fighters to go into the UFC, which should be interesting to see, especially in this time and age. And a big shout out to Dustin Lampros, our guy, Scrappy MMA, which is also why I'm so excited for it, because we have an MMA Island sponsored fighter fighting in the Ultimate Fighter. How cool is that? I cannot wait for it. And I think we're all here for it. So speaking of exciting things coming on, we have a really, really, really exciting fight coming up, and an interesting one that got booked. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because this is going to be very interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot. Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez, booked for July 17th, a fight night. That's a really strong week in a row right there, by the way, with fight nights and pay-per-views. But Hunter, what do you make of this fight?
This fight came out of nowhere, I feel like. Max Holloway had his title shot engraved before this fight even happened. Like, he broke striking records, he killed Calvin Kattar, and he did not have to accept this fight. He most definitely did not. He had the title shot coming up. People already view him as the people's champ, and we're just waiting for his next title shot. But Max Holloway, I guess, is hungry right now, and he wants another contender. And if he beats Yair Rodriguez, I feel like everyone's going to view him as the champion right now, because he's already beat Calvin Kattar. Now he's going on to beat Yair Rodriguez. It's like he's defending his people's champ title right now. He's beating all the contenders that should be fighting Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski has Ortega coming up, and that's fantastic. But this will be the second fight before Volkanovski even has one under his belt yet. So it's going to be interesting. Yair Rodriguez is so much fun to watch in the octagon. He's coming up with suspension, I believe. And, I think it was his last fight, maybe two fights before that. But the Korean Zombie fight is definitely one of my favorite fights in the UFC. It happened in December. I remember watching it around Christmas time, and I was sitting in the corner on my phone watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, this is crazy. And then the back elbow knockout that just happened on the exact buzzer beater, the fifth round, and a fight that was super duper close. Just one of the craziest series of events to ever happen in the octagon. And to go against Max Holloway, one of the best strikers in the UFC, both of them, some of the best strikers in the featherweight division, it's going to be a fight to remember. But I feel like Max Holloway is giving another gimme fight. This is going to be Max Holloway all the way. Max Holloway is, I say, is the featherweight champion still. That third fight was very controversial. It could have gone either way, I guess, but I saw it going Max Holloway's way. as a lot of people did. But yeah, I'm excited for this fight. Anytime Max Holloway steps in the octagon is a fight to watch, and especially if it's against Yair Rodriguez. It's his comeback fight. He hasn't fought in a long time, so I'm excited to watch both fighters fight. And it's tune in July 17th.
Dear Lord, this fight is going to be violence, violence, and some more violence, and I love it. Yeah, this literally did come out of nowhere. I mean, I'm sat there like yesterday. I'm just scrolling through Instagram, having a good time, minding my own business. Bang, Brett Okamoto, Holloway, and Yair Rodriguez, a man who we literally just talked about in the last episode. Where has this come from? What's happened? I mean, I don't even know, but I like it anyway. And I think Max Holloway is definitely the people's champion, and he's an incredibly smart people's champion because Max Holloway understands how the people think and what the people want to see. And this constant activity and these fight of the night performances and fight of the year contenders only further solidify his fanship. And he's very, very smart in doing what he's doing. He's fighting the best of the best, and quite frankly, he's outclassing them. And I think he deserves so much credit for how good of a fighter he is. I mean, not that anybody would argue, but especially now, he's just so good. And it's almost like he's on a different planet to every other featherweight. This is a nightmare fight for Yair Rodriguez to come back to. Honestly, I don't know why he agreed to it. I mean, I get it's a big name, but I don't see any benefits beyond that. You are fighting a peak active game Max Holloway. And how long was Yair Rodriguez out for with his USADA suspension?
He hasn't fought since, for the suspension, I don't know, but he hasn't fought since October 2019.
The suspension was around 3-4 months, I think, though.
So he hasn't fought for about a year and a half, and you're coming back against Max Holloway. I don't know. I don't see the sense in it myself personally. And the other issue that I have with this fight for Yair Rodriguez is in terms of physical attributes. I don't see what advantage he has either, because it doesn't matter if he tries to pressurize Max Holloway. Holloway thrives in counter striking and getting into dirty boxing. He loves doing it, and he's very good at doing it. And then if he tries to fight defensively, Max has got the boxing to just pick him to pieces like he did to Calvin Kattar for 5 straight rounds. So it's extremely difficult to see a way out of this for Yair. Again, I can only see him Max Holloway win because he's so good at everything that he does. Even, a lot of people have argued in the past his ground game suspect. Look at how good he's gotten on the ground. He has no fear against anybody in any aspect of the game. And I think this is going to be another W for Max Holloway. And again, I actually think Hunter phrased this brilliantly, and I do want to give him a lot of credit. He is the people's champion, and I actually agree. I think he should still have that strap around his waist. That second fight was as clear a 3-2 as you will ever see.
Yeah, I agree.
The first fight, yes, Volkanovski won. The second fight, I don't know what they were judging because that was a 3-2 all day and all night. But Max Holloway has been incredibly smart about this. He knows what the people see, and they saw what he did. And he is the unofficial featherweight champion, and he's only furthering that with every fight.
Oh, man. You guys already said this came out of nowhere. What happened? Here, okay, let me go into my conspiracy mode already. The crazy MMA mind that I have, all right? So,
tinfoil hats on?
Yes, I know. Here we go again. So here's what I think happened. So because obviously the unfortunate fight didn't happen between Volkanovski and Ortega when it should have happened months ago, Max Holloway was just kind of in the air. Doesn't really know what's going to happen. He was going to have to wait. It's a lot like the bantamweight division in a way, except for Aljamain Sterling's not the champion and Volkanovski is the legitimate champion. But it's a weird situation where Max Holloway's just waiting for the title picture to figure itself out. And it's not like they could rebook it all immediately because now they're doing the Ultimate Fighter. So he's just having to wait for a long time. So you know what Max Holloway's saying? I just beat probably the next in line after me and Calvin Kattar. And how tough has Calvin Kattar looked, just knocking out everybody left and right. And he absolutely destroyed him, picked him apart in every single way of the game. And so he's like, okay, now I have my name booked in for the title shot. The only way I see this going is Max Holloway reached out to Dana White. I don't think Dana White reached out to Max Holloway because Max Holloway, it would make no logical sense for him to take a fight like this, except for Max Holloway being who he is, which is a scrapper and wanting to get out there and put on a show, especially following the Conor McGregor versus Dustin fight. All eyes are going to be on Max Holloway this next week on the fight night as well, with the UFC getting more and more viewership as well. It's more of a place to make his name available. For Yair, I'm so excited that he's back. Yair Rodriguez is a very exciting fighter, but I have to say when I'm thinking about this fight, and I'm going to go all in for a second. Yair hasn't fought since 2019. That was a little bit ago. He obviously the suspension happened, but that didn't matter because he wasn't fighting anyways. He wasn't planning on fighting anyways. Although Yair versus Zabit stuff was supposed to be going
That
on,
would have been great.
But that
Oh
never
yeah.
and both of them basically should have been removed from the rankings. I know Magomed Sharipov was, but Yair wasn't. He was still on there. Now he's back, and I almost feel like this is a fight that he was kind of had to take because if you're being offered Max Holloway and you haven't fought for a long time and you turn that down, I mean, you haven't fought since 2019. Your last fight was against Jeremy Stevens. So he knocked out Chan Sung Jung in one of the craziest things ever. Then he had that weird main event in Mexico City where the eye poke happened against Jeremy Stevens. I don't know if you guys remember that. Then he rematched Jeremy Stevens on an undercard in the 3-round fight. And this will transition me into my next thing. In that fight, Yair clearly won round 1 and 2. But round 3, Jeremy Stevens was starting to come back and get a second win because one of the biggest problems with Yair's game is that he is so explosive and his style is all about the kicks and the flashiness and trying to knock the opponent out. But once that goes, his gas tank will go really quickly, especially if he explodes early. Oh my gosh, what a perfect matchup for Max Holloway in this fight. Max Holloway brings the pressure. Another thing, he hasn't fought for so long. No fighter, even Dominic Cruz when he was coming back, he didn't have octagon rust. That doesn't exist for him. Even if you don't have octagon rust, you're still going to be slower in that octagon when you haven't fought for a long time. Almost 3 years for Yair Rodriguez. When you haven't fought for that long, you're going to be slow. Max Holloway, he's the complete opposite of that. No matter what, he's going forward, landing strikes, landed almost 800 against Calvin Kattar. Almost 800 strikes. Think about that. How is that humanly possible? It shouldn't be, except for Max Holloway exists. Yair Rodriguez is going to be swarmed from the get-go. He's going to be trying to land those power kicks. He's going to be getting frustrated once he's just swarmed by Max Holloway. Then he's going to gas himself out, and I'm predicting a Max Holloway finish in rounds 3, 4, or 5, just because I think Yair is going to be gassed. He's going to be tired. He's going to be overwhelmed. He's not going to get anything going, and Max Holloway is just going to be peak in form and just overall better. If Yair tries to take Max Holloway down, I don't think he can do that. I think if Max Holloway wants to take Yair down, he could do that. Yair's biggest weapons are on the feet. And here's my last point, and I think this seals it for me, why I think Max Holloway is a seal for this pick, and I rarely will ever say that, but I am so sure he gets this done. Yair's biggest weapon is to rock and knock people out. Max Holloway, in all of his fights, in all of his career, almost every single one of his fights is an absolute war, has never been dropped. He fought Dustin Poirier 5 rounds, didn't get dropped one time. He gets rocked. He does not get dropped. He recovers better than anybody in the sport. He will not get dropped against Yair, especially if he's putting on the pressure. Even if Yair lands one of those crazy elbows, I don't think he catches Max Holloway clean because he's not there to take it and all the other stuff. I think Max Holloway walks out of this one with a strong win, puts on the pressure, and just seals his name even further for a title shot. I'm sorry, I said that would be the last thing. I was thinking one more thing. I know I'm talking forever. I just have a lot. I've been thinking a lot about this. Remember the last podcast we were talking about. Keelan and I were talking about the bantamweight division and also the featherweight division in a way. And one of those guys was Max Holloway, who wasn't the champion for a long time, but was cleaning out the division because he was waiting for the whole championship division to take place. This is related to Corey Sandhagen in the bantamweight division. If he beats TJ Dillashaw and then has to fight Rob Font after that, and he beats Rob Font, that's all the contenders done. Max Holloway did it before with the Jose Aldo fight. He beat Jose Aldo, then they had immediately rematch Jose Aldo against him again because Max Holloway had beaten everyone before him while he was waiting for the whole title picture to figure out. He's doing it again. And this is sneaky. No one's talking about this. He's doing it again, faster and faster. Just beat Calvin Kattar, beats Yair. Now, there's still a lot of contenders in 145. But what I'm saying is, if he takes out, that's like the top 4, you're going to have to wait for 145 to build itself back up again. If you give Max Holloway that big of a lead at the top, he will become even more dominant than ever. And that's just kind of my mind going crazy. But I think this is it's obviously a risk to take, but I think Max Holloway getting back in there is just the most Max Holloway thing ever. And even though it's a crazy fight, I absolutely love it. And obviously respect to Yair for finally taking a fight as well.
Jack, that was a fantastic breakdown right there.
I went crazy. I know.
No. That was perfect. There's a lot of things I didn't think about that you mentioned, and I'm like, wow, that does make sense. This does really play well into Max Holloway's card here when he can break down the fight stylistically. But there's one thing we're all tending to forget here, and that is the reason why he lost. Alexander Volkanovski won. Those deadly leg kicks that Volkanovski threw. Yair Rodriguez has as bad as a leg kick as anyone can have here in the UFC. He's got fantastic leg kicks. He can kick the outside of the leg. He can get the inside of the leg. He can kick the calf. He can kick up to the thigh. He can place it wherever he wants. And this might be able to slow down Max Holloway to the point where Yair can start landing some big shots. But that's not going to be enough, I feel like. I still see Max Holloway winning this fight either way, even if his leg is absolutely destroyed. I don't see Yair being able to finish Holloway. He's never been dropped, everything, yada, yada, yada. But Max Holloway, I say, still comes out in this fight on top. And it's just crazy to think about it the way you just put it. He is cleaning out this weight division, He's taking on all the prospects. He's basically becoming the people's champs time two right here. And if he beats Yair Rodriguez, then there's really no one left except Brian Ortega or Max or Alexander Volkanovski. Yeah. So he's doing this perfectly. He's really cleaning out this division, and he's really going to staple himself as the featherweight GOAT if he does go on to regain that title. Yair Rodriguez is no slouch, though, so don't sleep on him. Yeah. He comes out of nowhere. We saw this happen in the Korean Zombie fight. Korean Zombie looked unstoppable leading up to that fight. It's so hard to bet against Max Holloway, and I don't think you should. Like Jack said, this is a lock. Any fight is as good as a lock as this one. It's going to be possibly another dominant performance, another 800 striker, but because both these fighters strike so much. Yair might be able to frustrate Max Holloway with a good leg kick or maybe his jab. He's got a really good jab, but Holloway has such a great reach. He might have the reach advantage in this fight as well. I'm not really sure off the top of my head, but Max Holloway tends to always have the reach advantage. So watch out for this fight. This is going to be a fantastic fight and a fantastic fight week and a fantastic fight month. So just watch out.
Yeah, I actually think that's a very good point to make, especially now. Yair Rodriguez's leg kicks are very, very dangerous because he can hit any part of the leg. He can hit the calf, the outside, the inside, whatever. He's very good at targeting and managing the distance of them. There's two huge problems for Yair Rodriguez, though, and I think we've covered most of them, but I'll reiterate them once more just for my own clarity. The first problem is there is no one as intelligent as adapting to a scenario in fight as Max Holloway. If he sees those leg kicks coming and he feels them totaling up, he will adapt and he will adjust. He'll switch stance. He'll start checking them. And quite frankly, I don't see him even letting it get that far. Secondly, the points that Jack covered exquisitely, frankly. Yair Rodriguez is an incredibly explosive fighter and he's very entertaining to watch. But Max is very good at guarding against explosiveness and he's good at letting explosive fighters tire themselves out. And I just think that's what Yair Rodriguez is going to do. I mean, we've mentioned the Korean Zombie fight, and quite rightly, because it was one of the best knockouts of the decade, frankly. But what people forget is that for 2 4/5 rounds of that fight, Rodriguez was out on his feet. Yep. From 2 onwards, he was not to be funny, he was like a zombie walking around in the octagon against the Korean Zombie. His gas tank was completely shot to bits. And, he's not going to survive that against Max Holloway. Honestly, there were times the Korean Zombie should have put him away. And then, of course, he landed the elbow that he did, but that's a different story. I think he's going to drain himself against Holloway, and Holloway's just going to beat him up with that boxing because that's what Holloway loves to do. I mean, we saw that with Brian Ortega. He tried pulling guard midair with the guillotine against Holloway in their fight, and Holloway just beat the brakes off of him for a good 3 or 4 rounds before the fight was mercifully stopped. And I can see something like that happening again. Nobody outlasts Max Holloway unless you're Alexander Volkanovski. Not even Brian Ortega could do it. So I can't see Yair Rodriguez doing it either. And again, I have to agree, no fight is ever sewn up or is ever guaranteed. But if you want one as close to that as possible, a Max Holloway fight is going to be that, and especially a fight under these circumstances too.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I'm talking about this, whenever we're talking about this, I really hate to say that any fight's a lock, especially this one, because I do appreciate Yair Rodriguez so much. It's not that it's a lock per se, or as close to it can be to a lock because of Yair Rodriguez. It's because of Max Holloway and who
Yeah.
he is. No one matches up good against Max Holloway. No one matches up good against him, but especially a style of Yair Rodriguez, I think really goes against him. So that's why we're saying that, especially. The leg kicks are such a good thing to bring up. And while I was thinking about that, that is absolutely one of his best weapons, Yair Rodriguez. But I think one of the reasons why Max Holloway was so easy to eat those in the first Volkanovski fight, because he didn't eat as many leg kicks in the second fight. He adapted to it. But in the first fight, he has to appreciate Volkanovski is one of those guys that is so elite at wrestling. He is so elite at wrestling, is able to keep it on the feet. I think that's why he was eating so many leg kicks. It's because he has to keep the range. He couldn't just rush in and just absolutely berate like he does with every single other one of his opponents because of the wrestling threat. And why his takedown defense is so good, especially against Volkanovski, is because he's able to slow the fight down, fight at his own pace. Well, in the first fight, Volkanovski is such a tricky guy that Max Holloway was having to adapt to that for the first time in that fight. And I think that's a large reason why he lost that, because we all agree he lost the first fight. I think we all agree he won the second fight. The first fight, he was adapting to that and didn't really know how to handle that style, which is why Volkanovski that night absolutely deserved to become the champ. And he used the leg kicks very effectively. But Yair Rodriguez does not have that elite wrestling game. In fact, I would give everything on the ground towards Max Holloway in that fight. If Max Holloway was ever hurt, I think he could take Yair down. And especially in the grappling, that would just tire out Yair even more. But I'm just saying, I don't think he's going to be worried about that, just like he wasn't worried about Calvin Kattar has good leg kicks too. Now, not to the level of Yair Rodriguez, but just because that takedown threat isn't there, or just even like Brian Ortega had Yair's leg kicks, he would still be a little bit more respectful of it because of the elite submission game that Ortega has. Yair doesn't have any of that. So Yair's biggest strength is on the feet, and even with those leg kicks, I think Max Holloway, just like Keelan said, will be able to adapt to that and move forward, because he'll be able to not have to fear being taken down whenever he does move forward, and just be able to adapt to it when it's going on. So that's just why I think in any asset of the game, the fight IQ, I just think Max Holloway is one of the most perfect, well-rounded fighters in the UFC, but especially in this fight, I absolutely think that. Yeah, it was a lot. I don't know. I was thinking so much about this fight. I've been excited about it because it's going to be fireworks. Anytime you see Max Holloway or Yair Rodriguez alone, it's going to be a great fight. Seeing them matched up is just amazing. We were talking about this the other day. Featherweight is just such a fun division and everything. It's another fight to look forward to. And what's that? They just booked another fight night. Oh, 24th too. So we have Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier the 10th. Then we have this one the 17th. Then the 24th we have Corey Sandhagen, TJ Dillashaw. That is a stretch. That might be the best 3-week stretch I've seen in a long time. That is amazing. A lot of great fights looking forward to. Do you guys want to say anything else, or do you think that's good?
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to say. Could you imagine a Giga Chikadze versus Yair Rodriguez fight? That would be absolute fireworks.
Oh,
I think really that should have been Yair Rodriguez's comeback fight. I know, like you said, Max Holloway probably called for this fight. But if Yair wanted to call for a fight, that would be the fight he would call for, because that would be such a great kickboxing showcase for it. But that's all I got to say. I think we've covered Max Holloway so much. So.
Hunter, I am going to do you one better. And there's another fight, Edson Barbosa.
Oh,
the battle, ladies and gentlemen. Just picture this for a second, if you will. The battle of the leg kicks, Barbosa versus Rodriguez. Can you see it happening? Because I can. And dear Lord, shins would just be slamming off each other for 5 rounds straight. That's the fight that I want to see for Yair Rodriguez. Kickboxing against kickboxing, leg kicks against leg kicks. Dear Lord, the carnage, I can see it already.
No way that
fight
fight
would have
goes
a shin
rounds.
split. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, in the first 30 seconds, just blood dripping again.
And I'll bring it full circle. Why not Barbosa versus Chikadze as well? I mean, we got to see that fight too now, right?
Triple threat match. This is it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Put them
Absolutely.
all in the octagon. We'll get a ladder out.
Just see what happens. Yeah, whose leg falls off first? We'll...
Jack, we actually do you remember the last episode we talked about this? Why not throw Shane Burgos in there too?
Oh, I know. And then we need Zabit back too. We need to just have an all-out just featherweight war. What a division!
Oh my god, a
Featherweight's
six-man
got some
tag team.
fantastic strikers and kickboxers. You know, we take a look at all the other weight divisions. You know, it's a great mix of wrestling and stand-up game. Featherweight's almost dominantly kickboxing at this point.
It's so beautiful.
I'm not complaining about. I love a great kickboxing match. So
yeah,
it's gonna be great.
There's so many fighters. Absolutely. Well, great podcast, guys. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to us everywhere. We are literally everywhere. Keelan said it. You have to listen to it, including
everywhere.
iTunes and Spotify. Absolutely. Please make sure to go ahead and follow us on Instagram at MMA.island and check out all of our work on our website, MMAisland.net. Again, thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Great podcast, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.